I'm very unhappy with the Canadian education system.
It's terrible.
I keep taking my kids to different schools. Like this year, I'm taking them out of a private Jewish school, which didn't live up to expectations.
Yeah.
Taking them to a different school now because, I mean, even though they go to school, I still end up investing 2-3 hours into them in the extracurricular activities like math and stuff.
Yeah.
So, and they seem to spend more time teaching them social stuff. Like they should, be okay with people deciding that they're going to be a different gender
Stupid.
than
Man.
actually, any kind of academics.
That's a topic for another conversation, my friend. That's we could, if you want to go down that road for this podcast, I'm happy to.
I know. I would love to. I would love to hear your thoughts about, as a father, as an entrepreneur, as a father.
Man, I'm happy to share. So first and foremost, I think the whole gender thing is a little crazy, and it's gone way too far. You want the world to call you they, them. Let's redefine what that actually means for you, because your feelings are hurt that you're unhappy with the fact that you were born in this body. I mean, yeah, there's that, but then there's the children, and then there's the kids. And now, when you start pushing it against, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, grade 1s, 2, 3, and you start to some degree indoctrinating them in the fact that, hey, do you not feel comfortable with this? It's okay to not feel comfortable. You can be whatever you want. It's almost the equivalent. It's obviously an extreme, but it's the equivalent of, don't worry, everyone gets a participation trophy. Let's not worry about winning or losing, because we're all the same. And as long as you were on the field and you didn't do anything, but you were there, good job.
Yeah, you don't even have to try anymore. Like when I used to suck at sports, I used to get the occasional, well, you really gave it your all, right?
Yeah.
It's basically what you tell somebody when they suck, but they really at least you appreciate or respect the fact that they really put in their best effort, into the game.
Exactly.
And now you don't even have to do that.
Nope.
I mean, let alone scorekeeping, but I mean, now just they get compliments for everything.
You get praise for everything. You end up, and it's interesting, right? Because you can talk about generations, and you can, our parents' generation would say we're soft, and now and they created our generation. Let's be honest, and we're creating the next generation, and it's just this perpetual kind of thing. But I used to, whenever I would play sports, if I would suck, you know what happens? You get benched, because with the end of the game, we're trying to win. That's the whole reason you play a sport. It's not because, let's have some fun physical activities. And if we're going to play competitively, that's the whole purpose. Otherwise, then don't even bother making it competitive. Let's just go and run around and all that stuff. So,
what's ironic? The people who come up with this stuff, and it trickles down, right? They come from the top echelons of society. Could be politicians, could be different influential people. And out of all the people out there, it's these people that should know better. They know keeping score matters. Any politician only gets elected into the office because they win a race, because somebody has to vote for them, so they count the votes. I mean, there's no such thing as a politician who didn't have to count votes. There's no such thing as an influencer who doesn't count likes or followers, right? There's always a measuring stick, and if we condition the next generation to not keep track of their, not keep score, so to speak, then how do we expect for them to, say, start businesses? I mean, can you start a business just for participation? No, you have to pay the bills. When the bills come in and people want to get their salaries, and you have to pay your infrastructure cost, there's no such thing as saying, well, you know what? At least I showed up. Who gives a shit, honestly? Are you performing or you're not performing, and you're being judged by the numbers? You're being judged by your score.
I think Unfortunately, though, being in Canada, being in some parts of the U.S., you we are not building entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship a is not something that we're grooming our kids to become. We're grooming our kids to become um, workers, and but even then, to basically um, work around their standards, not to try and build anything, to basically create this incredible work-life balance that doesn't really isn't sustainable with how we live in these countries. It's not like we're, like I said to you, I was in the middle of Uganda, and it's one thing if you're in the middle of Uganda and everybody is poor and the standards of living are like the same across the board. Kids have to walk 3 kilometers to go to school, and like you're, but they're happy and everybody's like, because they're all living the same life. Now you're basically saying, no, 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 don't worry about it. Everybody gets participation. Everybody should get equal pay because of we're all equal. And everybody should have the same living standards, but let's make sure that the living standards are unaffordable based on what it actually makes sense. And I don't know, the system, unfortunately, and that's the problem with politicians. Like politicians aren't entrepreneurs. Politicians aren't typically business minded people. They've never really truly done much other than been in politics. And what is politics really? Other than go shake a few hands, like learn about some of the policies, figure out how you want to present yourself to the public, and say whatever the public wants to hear.
I think that's why a lot of people really like the idea of having someone like Trump run the country, because he actually ran businesses. As much as people hate him as well, I mean, America is pretty divided on that. And but at the same time, a lot of people that I talk to, and I talk mostly to entrepreneurs, I talk mostly to people who like have done something, took some kind of risk. For the most part, I don't get any positive feedback about our prime minister. He doesn't seem to be very popular. And at the same time, I really, the first time I actually heard someone talk about the whole issue with not keeping score with the entitlement was back in the late 2000s when I started studying Dan Kennedy. Even back then, he could already see it coming, how, the whole participation thing became more important than excelling. When I grew up in Ukraine, the kids who got bad grades, like if you got an F on your test or something, you were actually being asked to move back to the end of the classroom, to the last desk in the classroom, so you can let the kids who do pay attention sit at the front, because obviously you weren't paying attention. Now I think that's a bit extreme, but it shows you the philosophy of that part of the world where you were shamed for not performing, right? It was embarrassing to go home with a diary, because we used to keep like diaries where the teacher would put in the grades. Like it was embarrassing for me to go back home if I got a bad grade. Now, it does train a different mindset that I also think is a bit bad, where it's like you're being trained not to make mistakes. And so you just end up becoming very good at memorizing stuff and following certain protocols, but you're not really great at breaking the rules, which I think is actually very important for someone who wants to become an entrepreneur and succeed in life. But that's something that came later. And I think as a Ukrainian, I can tell you that another part of that system actually encourages you to break the rules all the time. It's something that you don't need to teach kids over there. It just somehow happens on its own. So imagine my surprise when I came to Canada, and I mean, you're just not being encouraged to excel. You're not being encouraged to try. And what I really, really hate is that you're not being encouraged to suffer in any way. But how do you build a strong character? How do you build a strong personality if you haven't suffered? I mean, if you study any of the greats in any field, there's always going to be a lot of suffering involved on their path. And we're raising these sheltered children that really don't suffer at all. I mean, it really even comes down to a point where my daughter is like, I'm thirsty. And I'm like, well, I don't have water right now, and we're going to be there in 20 minutes. So just hold it together, you know? I was like, no,
Yeah.
I can't, I can't. I need to drink now. I was like, are you kidding me? Just pull it together for 20 minutes. There's no water in the car. Deal with it. So I have to like actually say it. Back in the day when we were driving somewhere, we could go for like 3 hours without a bathroom break or water or whatever. And you wouldn't hear a peep from me, you know?
You know why though? You know what it is, and again, I'm going to bring this back because I literally just got back from Africa, and it comes down to, as humans, we don't have a choice but we're wired to solve problems, and we're wired to find what the problems are that we want to solve. In Africa, in Uganda, the problems are, I need to get by. I need to make sure that we have water. I need to get to school. I need to, and this includes, I need to walk a long distance, and I need to take care of my family and stuff like that, right? I don't have time to think about whether there's male or female, or like whether there's a spectrum between like men and women. These aren't problems that I'm facing. And as you come to Canada or the US or Europe, where all of those basic problems have been solved, right? We've already gone to the stage where we've solved all of this. So now the question is, well, what problems can we create? Because as humans, we're not going to live in utopia. Our minds don't work that way. We need to find a problem to solve, and we're going to create problems. So what are the problems? Well, you know what? I don't feel very comfortable in the body I was born in. So that's kind of a problem. Let's address that. Or, you know what? I already have all the water I want, but I don't have it instantly. I can't watch my show right now, like within the next millisecond. That's my current problem right now. I have to wait 2 minutes or whatever it is, right? So let's go and solve that problem, and let me complain about it until there's a solution. Most people will prefer to complain than actually go and solve the problem. That's the reality of it, and that's where entrepreneurs come in. But then if you disincentivize entrepreneurs to solve these problems, then what's the purpose? You just have a whole bunch of people complaining. And that's ultimately the problem with Canada. Is you live in a liberal minded place where entrepreneurship is kind of frowned upon, not per se, but in the incentive, at least. Okay, you do well, no problem, but we're going to make sure you take that money and give it to everybody who doesn't do well. And then you encourage all of the aspects of everything related to, you don't feel very comfortable in this situation, so let's amplify that and make sure you feel comfortable, because the world is a tough place, and we just need to make sure everybody's super comfortable. I don't know. We create these situations in our world, and that's the biggest problem with the first world, that we live in, is like, we've solved everything. So what's next to solve?